Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Loud and clear, Neil.
Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Uh, I think yeah, start our webinar. Uh, okay. Good afternoon once again. I am a graduate student from UP Los Baños. Welcome everyone for this Biodiversity Conservation Forum. Held Our Fault, Our Fix, of saving Philippine focal species. So, so Philippines is endowed with outstanding level of biodiversity. The rising demands from development and poor environmental protection and external factors such as climate place the country's biodiversity under grave threat. For urgent action to strengthen and conservation in the country. Our theme for this forum is centered on that call for Filipinos to lead the conservation of our natural treasures. Our fault, our fix is anchored on the principles of shared responsibility with people at the core of conservation and rehabilitation initiatives. We have invited notable experts this afternoon from the countries that embody these principles through their work. Will share with us their conservation initiatives and success stories in saving Philippine biodiversity through the focal species approach. To start this forum, allow me to introduce and my co-host for this afternoon's event, for Research and Conservation at the Philippine Eagle Foundation, a faculty and a Philippine Biodiversity Conservation Champion. Let me introduce Dr. Jason.
Okay. Thank you, Neil, for the very kind introduction. I can't see my video, so I hope you're seeing me. Again, good day, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Okay, indeed, this is a very special webinar, and we hope that through the presentations from our esteemed guests, we will come out of this webinar inspired and fired up, no, to do our share in conserving our natural wealth in our own backyards, no. I know that you are all keen to hear the talks, no. But before I introduce our first speaker, let me share a few reminders. Now, first of all, we took the liberty of muting our Zoom participants so as to avoid accidental interruption of our speakers while they are talking. Please also bear with us if there are technical glitches. We are relatively new to these webinar initiatives. But then again, the reactions and chat box are active, so please use this if you wish to. No, we will also have a 10-minute open forum after each presentation. Please participate and share your questions either via the Zoom chat box or the comment box of your YouTube live. No? And in the interest of time, we might not be able to entertain them all, but we will circulate the answers for the rest of the questions on my Facebook page. And also, for those who wish to receive their attendance certificate, please access and fill in the online assessment form from the Facebook page of the Department of Biological Sciences and Environmental Studies of UP Mindanao. They're very kind to support this. initiative, and after you've submitted the form, a certificate will be emailed to you. I guess that's it for the reminders. Let me now introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker has 25 years of experience working with communities, local governments, and other stakeholders in the northern Sierra Madre mountain range. And her work helped conserve several focal species, such as the Philippine crocodile, flying foxes, Isabella Oriole, and sea turtles, among others. And because of her inspiring work, she received several awards, including the DNR Biodiversity Recognition Award in 2017, the UK's Whitley Award for Nature in 2014, and the IUCN's Castillo Award for Crocodile Conservation in 2006. No? So please help me welcome, through your generous virtual claps, the Chief Operating Officer of Mabuaya Foundation Incorporated, Ms. Tess Balbas. No? So take it away, Tess.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, congratulations for hosting this webinar. This is new, but all the time that I invited to such talk, I'm nervous, but at the same time, I'm really, really very excited. So, and by the way, you really have a very, very nice theme, which is our fault, our fix, Filipinos at the forefront of saving Philippine focal species. But may I ask if you can see my screen now? Can you see my screen? Okay, there you go. Okay, so I am Tess Gatan Balbas, and I'm working as the Chief Operating Officer of the Mabuaya Foundation. Just hearing the name of our foundation, you already know that we are working on a certain species, which is, of course, the Philippine crocodile, and in our language, it's called the buaya. So Mabuaya Foundation is a contraction of two words, which means mabuhay and buaya, or long live the crocodiles. And our foundation is working together with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, with students from Leiden University and other European schools, with the Isabela State University, and with the local government units. And together, we are working to save the rarest crocodilian species in the world, which is the Philippine crocodile, which is endemic to the Philippines and is critically endangered because we already have less than 100 mature individuals in the wild. Historically, the Philippine crocodile is found in several islands, as you can see in this map. But now, you can only see them in parts of northern Luzon and in Mindanao, unfortunately. And we know that the reasons for its decline of population is hunting and habitat loss, as many of our species are experiencing. Scientists thought that Philippine crocodiles are extinct in northern Luzon. Fortunately, in 1999, one farmer turned this very beautiful species to our team when I was still working at Plan International Philippines. And that started our Mabuaya Foundation. Just to show you some of the areas where this species is found. This is Dunoy Lake, and this is inside the Northern Sierra Madre Natural Park. This is a very small lake, but this is very important for baby crocodiles up to 1.5 meters. And also, this area is very important because most of the time we found nests, Philippine crocodile nests, in these areas, as you can see in this picture. Large Philippine crocodiles loves to stay in rivers like this. This is the Catalagan River. It's a very very strong rapid, but big crocodiles are staying there. In our studies, we also transmitters like iridium satellite transmitters, and this kind of research gives us a lot of data. For example, you can see in this picture our partner, which is Joey Brown. I know that some of you knew him. He did the telemetry study for species last year. And just to show you what data does this study shows us, this is a large crocodile that it was captured in Dunoy Lake, and it was released by Joey Brown and Mabuaya team. Look at this. Some of you might say, oh my God, what happened? Crocodile is just swimming there. And just to show you where it goes, before the telemetry study using iridium satellite, we just thought that large crocodiles will go up to 6 kilometers. But with the satellite transmitters, we know that they can actually go farther. And look at this video. The pink one is the crocodile, and the yellow pins are how far the crocodile can go. So we also thought that crocodiles just stay on waters and ponds, but this study shows us that crocodiles also stay inside the forest. So maybe this is the reason why we cannot count all the crocodiles, because we are just using the waters. But through this study, we found out they can even go inside the forest. Look at this one. See, the pink ones are crocodiles that are inside the forest. And then it also shows us that crocodiles can go up to as far as 9 kilometers. This is for adult crocodiles. And they can even go upstream with this kind of habitat. Big rocks, strong rapids. And that's the very good result of the study that telemetry will give us. Another one is this one. This is another crocodile, which we call Sian. Sian is a boy from our area, and Rosemary. And this data will show us the Philippine crocodile love story. So the red one is the stretch of creek, very small creek, which is dominated by people. And if you can see at the background, it's really an agricultural area. But look at what it is giving us the data. So the pink one, of course, is the Lady Rosemary, and the blue one is Sian. And at some point in time, they are in the same spot. Look at this one. We found this one in April 22, and then on May 22, we found a nest. So this already shows us a very good data of the crocodile. And on August 22, which is exactly 90 days after we found the nest, the eggs hatch. And they gave us 12 eggs. And this is the Dirang area. Here, you see the cohabitation of people and crocodile. Because as you can see, there is a lady here who is just washing their dishes. But during the night, you can see a big, large crocodile in the same spot. Now, why do we still have crocodiles here? Most of the people live in this area are indigenous people who have a connection with crocodiles. However, the old are vanishing, and so with the crocodiles. We have cases that crocodiles are being killed, but the suspects are most of the time the immigrants who do not receive the same information campaign as those residents are getting. In the Philippines, there are also some human-crocodile conflicts, and this erodes the support for Philippine crocodile conservation. This is the place where there is a cohabitation, but there are still some crocodile biting incidents. But the testimony of this lady shows, kasi she was interviewed by eyewitness, but she said, I know that there is a crocodile there, but we are. So she said it's her fault. So that's a good testimony from the community. And there is a little public support for crocodile conservation because of the wrong information that we got during our childhood days. And there is also bad connotation about crocodiles in the Philippines. You know, they are even associated with corruption in the Philippines. So, Mabuhay Foundation is always looking at we can conserve the rarest crocodiles of the planet in the wild. As many organizations do, we always use the community-based conservation approach for wetland conservation in this case. We have established model for conservation of these areas, which the first is, of course, to look at where are those areas. We have to identify what areas have a high conservation value. And we found out in San Mariano that three core areas that needs to be protected. And once we found this out, we give the information to the local government unit, and that's the time that they were able to craft an ordinance, even declaring Philippine crocodile as flagship species for wetland conservation in San Mariano, which is very brave step of the local government, especially so that politicians are associated with crocodiles. We also did awareness and threat surveys with communities and with students. And we found out that still the threats are crocodile killing out of fear, of unsustainable fishing methods that depletes fish stocks but can also stun Philippine crocodiles. And the biggest threat is the conversion of its habitat into rice fields. Small ponds are converted into rice fields. We use the results of those surveys in designing our public awareness campaigns with Isabela State University campuses in San Mariano and in Cabagan. And so we produce posters which are put in very strategic locations, like putting them in a sexy poster where you will be attracted to see the girl, but will also be, interested to look at what's next to that lady. And we produce storybooks for school children, and we do a lot of school lectures with elementary students, to visitors of our crocodile rearing station. We produce puppet shows which are being brought to schools in San Mariano and even up to Cagayan. And we organize trips to college students so that they will appreciate the Philippine crocodiles if they see them in the wild. And we have lots of theater shows, crocodile dance shows. We have mascot so that we will lessen the fear of children and community members towards the crocodiles. And for 2 years now, the local government unit, together with Department of Education and Mabuhay Foundation, conducted the Croc Fest every December. And just to show you what we do during the Crocodile Festive Day. And also conduct lots of science teachers training so that the Philippine crocodile conservation or biodiversity conservation in general will be incorporated in their syllabus. After that, we do community consultations with women, with men, and we do land use planning. Where do we put the proper land use planning will also show us the areas that needs to be conserved and areas that needs to be rehabilitated if needed. And this result to a sanctuary declaration by the local government unit or at the barangay level or at the municipal level. And these sanctuaries are demarcated with billboards and concrete monuments. As you can see, this is PCS, Philippine Crocodile Sanctuary, and if it's Fish Sanctuary, we also put FS. And before putting that, we need to have another consultation because there are lots of treasure hunters who might think that there is a certain gold in this monument. We established monitoring systems with our sanctuary guards. We have 14 sanctuary guards and several monitoring in our Crocodile Sanctuary Management Board. Here you see our Amante, our staff, Amante, who is teaching Manong Victorino, one of the sanctuary guard, using the lawing system. But it's very hard for them to follow, so we are back to the normal monitoring system that we are using. And this is Manong Nestor, he is Kalinga, who is also one of our sanctuary guard. Just recently, we also used drone in our monitoring activities. I hope you can see, this is a Philippine crocodile. We use drone and we discovered that they are not at all disturbed by the drone. So this is Catalangan River again. I hope Jason will be able to visit and release crocodiles soon. And also Indira and Liza, you come over and release crocodile. So these are just some of the photos of the crocodile, which is captured by drone. And we established law enforcement system together with Tanggol Kalikasan ng Pilipinas, the DNR, and the local government unit, who in a way will help us in the deputation of our sanctuary guards. For law enforcement, this just doesn't happen in the four corners of the room. We also bring them to the field, show them how to take proper arrests up to the filing of case. This is Bernard Tarun, and one of the sanctuary guards is doing the illegal fishing, while the sanctuary guard will try to catch him, and we will check if he's doing the right thing or not. So this is, for example, kaingin making, and these are our sanctuary guards. And we establish management systems with all the communities that has crocodile sanctuaries, and these management systems are being adopted. The wetland management and law enforcement systems are adopted by the local government unit. So in this case, they put money for the protection of their wetlands in San Mariano. And the last step we do is the promotion of green livelihoods. Here we're working with the indigenous people of Cagayan and Isabela to promote handicraft making, and now there are a lot of orders even coming from wholesalers in Manila and local government unit because of their program on no to single plastic use. So this is one of our recipients. It's on Facebook if you want to check. You know, the Philippine crocodile is increasing, but it's very, very slow. So we set up the Head Start program. The Head Start program starts from searching, and after we found the nest, we guard it until it hatches, and then we bring them to the rearing station where we organize school trips with children, and we have the pond and give them some lectures. And when we have children, we always make sure that they have an attachment with the crocodile. So we teach them how to weigh the crocodiles, how to measure the crocodiles. And then while the crocodiles are growing in the rearing station, we are trying to find for a suitable habitat, convert it into a release site like this one. And after that, we organize release activities with children, with communities, with politicians, with donors. And what do we get from protecting their crocodiles? Before, when you Google, you always see ambush and PA. But now if you Google San Mariano, you could see that there is this big conservation of Philippine crocodiles in their site. So aside from pride, you always have more fish catch because you are not just protecting the crocodile, but you are also protecting the water which the fishermen are depending in their everyday lives. So you can see that they claim that after the declaration of those areas as fish or crocodile sanctuaries, they have better fish catch nowadays. And some of the species that were not being caught before are coming back these days, like this one here. This is Mario Soto, one of our monitoring team in one of our sites. Here, just cleaner water for irrigation, for daily use, the pride with communities. And, it's not just doing all these information campaigns, but you have to evaluate, does this help? And we are happy to know that information campaigns are working because many people are now supporting the Philippine crocodile conservation. And here, the population is also growing very slowly, but with all the floods that are happening now, I'm very worried for the monitoring because they might have been flushed down up to Cagayan River, maybe up to Apari, Cagayan. And the crocodile killing in San Mariano is also decreased. Unfortunately, in 2018, we have crocodile killings. We reported this to the DNR. Unfortunately, until this time, no action has been taken. Maybe kung ito ay Philippine eagle, baka may nagawa na because Philippine eagle is so charismatic compared to Philippine crocodiles. Well, that's what other people say. So I hope there will be a time na may makukulong din sa pagpatay ng crocodile. Now, this is the situation in 2001 wherein we have 3 core areas. But now we see that ayun na, dumadami na yung ating mga areas na may crocodile. So from 3 to 8 in this case. And the future for Philippine crocodile, since the population is still very small and we are inspired by what the Philippine Eagle Foundation is doing, we also set up this Philippine Crocodile Conservation Center. The pond has been built, but we are still looking for money to build this one, which will become the one-stop shop of tourists who will be going to see the crocodile and the Northern Sierra Madre Natural Park. Now, the conservation model we use for Philippine crocodile is being replicated in some other areas. For example, conservation of Philippine crocodiles of Isabela Oriole in Bagao, the conservation of flying foxes, again in Bagao and in Divilacan, the conservation of other species, the forest and the wildlife, the birds in Ilagan. This is where the Ilagan-Divilacan Road was built. Fortunately, we were able to save some of it by declaring sanctuary, and also the conservation of sea turtles in Isabela province. Now, just to show you who are the people behind the foundation, we are very glad that we are majority Filipinos who are trying to save these species from extinction, and we are very glad that we have one foreigner who also have a heart to help us in the conservation of the biodiversity of the Philippines. So with that, I want to say long live the crocodiles and thank you very much for having me here.
Okay, a round of virtual applauses for Tess. Thank you very much for that very inspiring and very comprehensive presentation of the conservation work being done by 100% Filipinos plus one Filipino at heart to save the Philippine crocodile, which is equally a Filipino citizen. So at this juncture, we're happy to receive questions from the audience. If you have burning questions that you want to ask Tess, Tess has been at this for more than half of her life, so I'm sure she would be very happy to answer your questions. No, but perhaps as a starter, let's have one of the questions here. Tess, again, thanks for your presentation. You mentioned that it's quite challenging to um, to spearhead the conservation of a relatively discriminated species like the Philippine crocodile. So, in your opinion, what are the two greatest challenges of managing the conservation of the Philippine crocodile? And then, how do you overcome these challenges? Tess?
Well, I think the first thing to do is always to involve the communities in whatever you do. You start it from the very, very start. Otherwise, you cannot win the involvement of the people. And of course, give them the right information about the species.
Right. So again, involving as many Filipinos as possible. And also, I really admire what you're doing to popularize crocodile conservation, despite the fact that crocodiles are associated with bad traits such as corruption. But I think you're doing it very well. Um,
I always say that crocodile is truly Filipino because they are just small compared to other crocodilian species. And now
right.
we,
Right.
yeah, and now we have new data which shows that human is not part of the diet of the crocodile. Instead, the diet of the crocodile we found out are the pests of the farmers, like snails, rats, like that. And those are the things that we're sharing during our information campaign.
Okay, so again, a real predator, a unique predator of the Philippines, helping out with ecosystem services. Okay, let me jump to my second question, and I think our audiences can share with this kind of question. Now, given the travel restriction due to the pandemic, how do you sustain your conservation work?
We're glad that we have one staff who is from that site. You know, we have one superhero who is doing all the jobs that everyone is supposed to be doing during this time of pandemic. But fortunately, we were able to get, clearance from checkpoints that we can do our work. But we don't do field very often at this time because we are also afraid that we are carrying the virus that we don't know. Because most of the time we are working with the indigenous people who are also as vulnerable as we are. So once we hear that there is a positive in this area, cancel everything like that. But we have a staff who is from the area who can do more work there than us. Thanks to him, we have a hero.
Right, and we can all share with that. This is where communities can really help. If they can do conservation within their backyards, and we're very happy that many programs such as the Philippine Crocodile Conservation Program is supporting community-based conservation work. And we do agree that it's also both for the safety of the community and the safety of the staff. While we're also waiting for other questions, maybe we could give this third question to Tess. What substantial improvements do you think have happened to the Philippine crocodile population since you started the program?
We started in 2001 with only less than 20 individuals. And now, in 2009, we reached 109. But because of the flooding and the typhoon, crocodiles, even they are crocodiles, and people think that they are already big enough to fight all these calamities, they can't. So some of the crocodiles are also being washed away during floods and during erosions because sometimes they also dig in areas and just like burying themselves, and then they are there. Once the landslide is there, then they are gone. You know, and flash floods can also drive them away. Last Lawin, they observed a crocodile in our area, which is more than a kilometer away from San Mariano. So this kind of thing, and this would result uh, of killing by the people, kasi they do not receive information.
Right.
So those are the fear that we have, especially like the present situation now with all the flooding in Isabela and in Cagayan. So we will see the population of the crocodile again in December if they have dwindled or not.
Okay, thanks for that, Tess. We have, I think, three questions from the audience. We have one from Cheryl, who I assume is joining us from Butuan. Hi, Cheryl. Any tips
Wow.
on how the academe can initiate conservation action for the threatened flying foxes? Because you all know that Mabuhay Foundation is also conserving flying foxes in the Northern Sierra Madres. The academe can initiate conservation action for the flying foxes in the Agusan Marsh Wildlife Sanctuary and then the endangered sea turtles in Siargao. So any tips on how the academe can initiate all of these actions?
No. First, look at what the people know about the species, and if you have college like we have here, development communication students who can also help us in research, looking at what does the people know about the species, and use that information to make your campaign. Like here, we made a puppet show that includes the conservation of the flying foxes. For example, we made a poster showing that flying foxes can be the foresters of the future because of the seeds that, yung kinakain nila, and then they just throw it wherever, and that can also grow. So we have a poster, for example, like that. In campaign, that's very important.
Right. Any tips about sea turtle conservation in Siargao Island?
Sea turtle conservation, what we did last year was to include sea turtle areas as sea turtle management zone. And then next that we will do is make a management plan. Before we have that, sea turtle areas are not part of the monitoring areas of the DNR. But after those discoveries that these are the threats and these are the areas, they already put that as part of their monitoring system using this LAWIN. And just last year, there is also a prohibition, no, lots of information campaign. Last year, where we have the highest poaching activities in Dinapigi, they were able to save one nest that has more than 40 yata yung na-hatch, and they released it immediately. So sa akin lang is more information campaigns on that, and include areas in your campaign. For example, in Dinapigi, most of the poachers are other provinces. So pag may pumunta, you put billboards there and put your do's and don'ts so that they will know. Kasi otherwise, wala eh. Ganon.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Tess. We have two more questions here from Orlean. One from Orlean. I think Orlean has joined us from Cebu. How about Orlean? Hello. Congratulations and more power on your conservation work. You mentioned that in the telemetry study, the crocodiles can go inside the forest as far as 9 kilometers. Do they utilize tributaries going inland? And
They
second
do.
is, what are the activities of the crocodile inside the forest?
Inside the forest, you also have other pre-species that they can eat. So maybe that one. And I'm not sure if this is true, but indigenous people said that wherever the silent areas are, they also see crocodiles. And they even said that crocodiles are like us; we don't want to be disturbed. So people here, they move away. It's good if they can have areas that they can move away. What if there is none? So that, no, and that's the importance of having a very good land use planning. While you are also promoting cohabitation up up to anong limit. So we should also look at ilan ba yung kailangan ng Philippine for their habitat. Ilan ang kailangan ng tao? Saan ang kailangan ng tao? Saan ang kailangan ng crocodile? This is also the same as may mga local government units who would say, okay, declare everything as fish sanctuary. But where would you put your people? Diba? Something like those kind of consideration if you do management planning.
Right. Okay, thanks, Tess. Any comment on the tributaries? Are they using tributaries as movement pathways?
They do. They do. They do.
Okay.
May mga small areas na na ginagamit nila. Parang tao lang din. They do shortcuts, they do long cuts based on our studies. But large
Okay.
areas, of course, do need larger areas. That's for
Okay. And then the last question, I think you have a new admirer. No, hello, ma'am. I admire the information and awareness you have amassed that allowed the community to establish sanctuaries and do conservation efforts. For your challenges with the LGUs, what difficulties did you encounter when communicating information to local municipalities to create laws and ordinances on conservation? Challenges talking to LGUs.
um, kung minsan you need to have somebody inside. Like you have your conservation action and that's where come in. Kasi they have also their responsibility sa anong code ba yun, na to protect the natural resources, whatever is there. It's hard to convince people, but you need to have somebody from inside kasi not all LGUs have the same priorities as what we have. There are local governments that also has, ang tagal nilang mag-decide. We're lucky that in San Mariano, you have a very, very nakakaintindi ka agad and may heart sila sa conservation. And that makes the life of conservation work easier.
Yeah, so we need to find our local champions, no,
Right.
within the council and within the municipality. Okay, hindi natin palalampasin na isang question pa from one of our colleagues, from Godfrey Jacosalem. Hello, Bruno. Do crocodile consume other land-based species like warty pig or any ground-based mammals?
They do, they do. Actually, nung bagong-bago pa lang ako sa Mabuaya and they have this study, may nakita. But in the wild, it's the survival of the fittest. If the crocodile is bigger than the warty pig, yan. Kinain niya. Maliit man yung warty pig. Pero yan kung sino mas malaki and yung istorya sa wild is survival of the fittest, yan. When we release crocodiles in Divilacan, Isabela, I was watching kasi there are lots of fish and crocodiles are just there. Kahit pala crocodile, they had a hard time catching fish, kasi mabilis man yung isda. So doon ako naniwala na in the wild it's just the survival of the fittest is the game.
Right, whichever is relatively easy to handle, no?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we've exhausted our time. Thank you very much, Tess, for the patience and the wisdom in answering this question. Really enjoyed your presentation, and we hope to do this again in the near future.
Sure.
Again,
sure.
thanks, and take care on your side of the Philippines.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so at this juncture, I'm going to turn over to my co-host who would introduce our next speaker. So Neil, please take over.
Okay, sir. So, thank you again, Ma'am Tess, for the very interesting talk. So, let me introduce the second speaker for this afternoon. She's born and grew up in Mati, Davao Oriental, where she first developed her interest in conservation. She graduated from Silliman University in Quezon City, and her involvement in conservation began when she received the BP Conservation Award in 2000. Over 4,000 candidates for that award, only 10 other got the award. So her extensive experience in the country has led her to rediscover supposed extinct species, contributing to the discovery of new species of hawk owls and penguins. She is now currently working as president of the Philippine Biodiversity Conservation Foundation Incorporated, where she leads the efforts for the conservation of threatened endemic species of wild animals in globally important areas in the Philippines. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our second speaker, Ms. Lisa Paguntalan.
Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Jason, for inviting Field Bio to this event. Um, may I ask everyone if you can now also see my screen? Neil, can you see the screen? So I'm a little bit of background about Philippines Biodiversity Conservation Foundation. We are a non-government organization that works for the long-term conservation of Philippines' native and endemic wildlife. We are also all Filipino NGO and based here in Bacolod City, Negros Occidental. So dito ako naka-lockdown ngayon. So our area of operations highly concentrated on sites where there's very limited conservation intervention and where the higher number of threatened endemic species in the Philippines are found. So we also conduct studies in other parts of the Philippines, but the site conservation programs where we implement for the more than 20 years now are actually here in the Negros Panay faunal region because this is where we have the world's threatened hornbills, the rufous-netted hornbill and the Visayan tarictic hornbill. They're actually the two species that one of the reasons why we were also based here in Negros Island. And the other species we just recently worked with is the Sulu hornbill. There is another species of threatened species here in the Philippines, that is the Mindoro hornbill. It is actually managed, or this is one of the species, focal species of our partner organization, Mindoro Biodiversity Conservation Foundation. Hornbills are very identifiable species because of their huge, massive, long down-curved bill that has or may not have a casque. So the casque is that section on the part, the top of their head. Sometimes it does not have a function, but in some cases of species of hornbill, it actually makes their sound resonate more. And of course, the very characteristic feature of this bird is this long flattened eyelashes, which makes them even more attractive species. And because of this hornbill, the other characteristic of this hornbill that makes it unique from the other groups of birds is that it is the only type or group of bird that seals in the female in the nest hole or in the nest during the entire period of their breeding, during the time when it's incubating its egg. So here you can see in the picture is a Visayan tarictic hornbill nest in Balinsasayo Twin Lakes. You can actually see that this seal inside that forms like a barrier or a door is made by the female herself with the help, a little bit of help with the male. When she was incubating, you can actually see the female partly in there. And pairs of hornbills are typically loyal to their nest. So they use and reutilize this nesting tree until somebody takes over or drives them away. And because of this characteristic of the species, it is actually what makes them also vulnerable. You see, when the female is sealed into that nest hole, the rest of the time it is entirely dependent on the male for its survival. So it is flightless at the time when it's inside, it will lose the primary feathers and the tails, and it cannot fly. So when a poacher would take in the female and the young, you actually wipe out a good population of hornbills. And if you also hunt out the male, then the rest of the family also suffers because they only wait for the male to return and feed them, provide them with nourishment. Because of these, hornbills are also generally omnivore and frugivore. So majority of them are omnivores, but we have a large population which are also frugivores. So that would mean they would have to search for kilometers and kilometers, sometimes up to 100 kilometers for the larger species of hornbills in Asia and Africa. And even here in the Philippines, up to 50 kilometers, they would have to fly to search for this partially distributed food. Um, it's not every day or every time trees would actually have fruiting ripened fruits. So they would have to go in flocks or in group to search for these fruiting trees. So when they aggregate in the fruiting tree, that is again where they are vulnerable to people who are hunting this species. Uh, because of these characteristics of the hornbill, they're vulnerable to habitat loss, especially that they use the larger species of trees as their nest and roosting site, and also the trees that they are actually searching for food, particularly the larger species of hornbills. And they are more vulnerable to poaching because majority of the hornbills only have at least two young every time they breed, and so they don't propagate that fast. Here in Negros, we are currently faced with a problem about the developments inside the protected area, particularly the largest protected area here in the island, the Northern Negros Natural Park. So for the last months, we have been advocating about how should this stop, and to make sure that DPWH follows also the protocols and the law, and to engage the rest of the public to take concern about this matter. It's not just only uh, habitat loss by development, it's also mining. In the southern part where the critically endangered Sulu hornbill is found, mining was one of the biggest threats that was identified for this species. And the sad part about this, it appears that in 2019, the nickel mining company has decided to move to another site in Bicol because they have sort of like mined out the areas in Tawi-Tawi. And now they're going to Bicol. How would that be good for? I hope they're not in the habitats where the Luzon hornbills are also found. And you might have also come across with this picture. This is recently came into uh, the news. And this is where when the Biliran governor actually offers a reward for wildlife poachers that hunted the Mindanao hornbill that was found in Biliran Island. And the other thing that is also unique about this one is that this is the Republic Act 9147 is actually what was used in the protection of these species, or when filing the case if they found the culprit for this species. So far, we have not been so successful when it comes to arresting people involved in poaching. And so what do we do about the conservation of these species and their habitats? We are looking at key biodiversity areas which are not legally protected. Sometimes they are just declared locally. Sometimes they are also declared as a watershed or a forest reserve. But those that are also protected areas are the ones that have annual budgets and a little bit of protection afforded to it. Then we also look into the local governments, the DNR and the Protected Area Management Office, which are the offices that are regularly giving funds or are institutions that are mandated to protect also the habitats of the hornbills. And because of this, we concentrated on working on this aspect using the hornbills as indicators in biomonitoring. Why did we also focus on this one apart from other things? It's because many of the species that we have in the Philippines, we don't know how many there are. And when it comes to management of the species and the habitats, we would always use or ask the question about the population. And if we don't have a population estimate, then we are just only basing on guesses. And population monitoring or biomonitoring is a good way of looking at trends of what is happening in the ecosystem or the protected area. We use the more popular hornbills, although we record the other hornbills as well, because these are the more thalictic hornbills are much more common and present in degraded and also good quality habitats. And the other things that we did is to conduct a synchronized biomonitoring. So we have at one point only one time that we do the monitoring together in the different parts of the protected area. So a large protected area would have one sampling time involving a lot of local government units and local communities. This is also where we engage citizen science to participate in this activity. And what have we gathered so far? Apart from this, we also use the support from the biomonitoring of the regular biomonitoring of the protected areas with the communities, as well as the student researches and research activities that we also facilitated in the area. So the results of the studies that we did for Visayan Thalictic hornbill took us 5 years to develop because of a very limited number of encounters. We needed at least 60 detections, 60 times that we have detected the species on site to be able to actually come up with a more robust population estimates. We use the distance software in estimating the density of the species, and the range of the density for each of the protected area in Negros is from 0.08 to zero point 0.8 individuals per hectare. Cluster size actually ranges from 2 to 8 individuals. There's very few in some protected areas, but the population estimates for the whole island of Negros is around 3,107 individuals, which is way, way higher than that of the IUCN estimates. We also noticed that within each protected area, there is a difference in the number of trees with a height of about 10 to 15 meters, and also trees which is more than 21 meters in height. And these differences in each of these sites is actually influencing the detectability of the Visayan Thalictic hornbill within each protected area. So for trees with more than 60 centimeters DBH, the diameter at breast height of the trees, as well as the percent understory cover. So if you have a more bigger trees, taller trees, you tend to have not so dense understory. But if you would have a shorter trees, you would have a more dense understory. And because these two goes together, these are the two factors that actually came out positively correlated that or influences the presence of the species. On the picture that is shown to you here is the record of Thalictic hornbills, where you would have at that time at least 50 individuals of Visayan Thalictic hornbills that was counted in Balinsasayao Twin Lakes Natural Park. This was last year. And imagine way back in 2004 when we would go up and bird in Balinsasayao Twin Lakes, we hardly can find one bird or one Thalictic hornbill. It would take us about 2 to 3 days before we can encounter one. And because of the protection that was afforded in that protected area, these actually hornbills had recovered and they are doing quite well in that habitat. The other story that I like to share with you is also that of the Sulu hornbill. This is a hornbill that is found in the southern archipelago, particularly in the Holo and Tawi-Tawi islands, but currently assumed extinct in Holo and now only survives in Tawi-Tawi. Conservation in Tawi-Tawi has always been a challenging one, and it only started at this time when this woman, Mayor Reggie Sahali, who had just had her birthday yesterday, actually took the initiative in saving the remaining forests of Panglima Sugala in Tawi-Tawi. And when she started working on this one, the more challenging aspect that we are facing is that majority of a larger section of the forest, remaining forest in Tawi-Tawi is actually uh, an agricultural land. So these are the forests which has a land classification that is agricultural land, which means it can be titled and can be owned. And over the last decade, the government of the Philippines has also awarded portions of larger sections of this land, agricultural land, as a CLOA, a certificate of land ownership agreement, or for the people of local people in Tawi-Tawi. And so the CLOA owners of Panglima Sugala are also involved in the cutting of trees within their sites or the area where they owned. And this has a detrimental impact on the population of the Sulu hornbill. So what Mayor Reggie Sahali did at the time when we started talking to her in 2017 was to actually meet the owners, the CLOA owners, the community, and started discussing what we can do together to help the Sulu hornbill. At the same time, I was also working with the local communities together with Mayor Reggie Sahali, starting engaging them in the importance of Sulu hornbill and the habitat, as well as taking them to other places like Zamboanga to show them that the hornbills in Mindanao or in Zamboanga Peninsula is actually totally different from what they have in Tawi-Tawi, and that they have to take pride of what they have because it's only found in their island. So with these initiatives, we started working with 10 families who signed up at that time immediately with the local government that they had urged to support. They are supporting the conservation of the Sulu hornbill habitat. So these are the owners, the CLOA owners, together with Mayor Reggie Sahali and some of the members of the municipal council. And with that, 10 of the firstborn child of this family were sent out to be trained in wildlife monitoring, on basic conservation aspects, as well as in cross visits in Zamboanga Peninsula. These activities were also facilitated by DNR Biodiversity Management Bureau and DNR Zamboanga Sibugay in Region 9, as well as a little bit of support from Los Angeles Zoo and Virginia Zoo at the time. From this aspect, we developed the Tawi-Tawi Advocates for Wildlife Support Initiatives. So these are the group of families that had CLOA and had signed in with the local government of Panglima Sugala to support the Sulu hornbill. We call them Tausi. And with that, Panglima Sugala was very proud to put up a signboard to take ownership at it is a home of the Sulu hornbill. So earlier this year, we went to Tawi-Tawi before COVID lockdown to do some studies funded by the Protect Wildlife Project of USAID. We were supposed to do a study here in Buan in the March time, but then because of COVID-19 pandemic, we were not able to go back, and sadly to say, we lost the funding for this one. Nevertheless, at the time when we were doing the sampling, these were the records of the Sulu hornbill that we found in the area. We also found 2 nest sites, and recently we added 2 more relatively within the same area, which have been active and been breeding successfully this year. So far, this is what we know of the species. There's an average of 5 individuals within the area where we were working with. And there were at least three groups, which has more or less a range of 3 to 7 individuals for each group. The highest cluster size that we have encountered was 15 individuals, and there were now 4 active nests in at least a 500-hectare area so far that we have identified in that site. And there's 2 young were produced each year, and they were also loyal to their nest. And this is a photo of a juvenile Sulu hornbill. You see the differences in their bill. It is not yet well formed, and the absence of the casque. And this is feeding actually on the fruit of ilang ilang, the famous ilang ilang tree. And I am showing you here a photo of a nest site, the third active nest site, and also the individual that was actually guarding this. And this was a photo taken by Muksin Ahmad just last September of this year. So even though there was a COVID and we were not able to go visit the sites, the communities where we are working with, armed with a camera and GPS, they were able to also do continue on doing the monitoring of the species. And this was on the November monitoring activity just before typhoon hit the Philippines. They were also there together with the municipal environment officer here, Benhar Rahabe, who facilitated the regular monitoring of following the standard methodology that we have implemented. And just to show you that the results of what they did on this community-based monitoring, which was quite impressive for a first run, although the numbers are good and the stations are, the identification of the species are biased to the species that they can identify, but still, it's a very good record so far. What we needed to actually make sure that they also improve on us on their estimates of their distance, because it's still, I think this is still way off, but it's still a very good try, first run. They were also recording other species of critically endangered species that are found in the area, including the critically endangered blue-winged rackettail. So this was again another photo of the local community that we have given the camera on site to monitor. And I am showing you here part of the advocacy that the Protect Wildlife is going to launch. This is the animation on the Sulu hornbill, isang kwentong kalikasan that was narrated in Tagalog, but we have provided subtitles in Tausug. So this is Tausi in the story, talking to the girl about the benefits and also the impacts of losing the forest. And this is a project of the Protect Wildlife Project of USA. The other things that we continually do on the site, and just recently we are still celebrating the Negros Wildlife Provincial Wildlife Month, which is now on its 16th year. Fully supported by the local government of Negros Occidental. And so if it's not again for the pandemic, we would have another headless parade with our wildlife festival jingle sung in Hiligaynon, which actually features a lot of wildlife that is shown here in the headdresses of these kids. And one of the things that we notice is that in the many works that we did, in my experience, is that the communities are actually the frontliners. And if you have their support, just like what Tess has presented earlier, they would make a lot of difference in conserving many of our threatened species. So if we help the communities, we actually save the hornbill habitats and in turn save the hornbills. And with that, I think that's my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I thank our different partners who had us this time, never stop supporting Field Bio, and continue to support the Hornbill Conservation Program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lisa, for that very enlightening and inspiring presentation. You're definitely doing cutting edge work for the conservation of hornbills in the Philippines. So unfortunately, the Wi-Fi connection of my colleague Neil is not working well, so I'm taking over.
Okay.
Again, this is the time that we raise our questions to Lisa. And then perhaps as the first salvo of the open forum, I have this question for you. One of the strong contributions of PhilBio to conservation is developing models of citizen-based monitoring of hornbills. No, what practical tips can you share to individuals or organizations who wish to start community-based population monitoring of species? Practical tips, Lisa?
I only have one. Is that is to be honest. Um, when you are honest, you are transparent, and then you earn the trust and confidence of the local communities. So it's just like when you work on site, it's just like having somebody visit your house. So if you are visiting a neighbor's house or someone's house, if they don't know you would have to let them know who you are, what is your intention, what do you plan to do, and all of these things. Only then will you start to trust this person and start having that relationship. So the success in the community conservation work is on that level of trust and confidence and on being transparent. People do not trust easily, and they should not, because we have been into a lot of situation where local communities are more vulnerable to these projects. So if you intend to stay longer on site, it is more, or to implement a conservation program, that is a very important aspect to consider. If you are just there for a shorter term, like you are just doing a research survey, be very specific and be very transparent that that's what you intend to do, so you don't raise up the expectations of the local communities or the local government that you are partnering with.
Okay, thanks for that, Lisa. Again, although it's a cliche, honesty is the best policy, transparency, and also being truthful. We have another question here from Angelo Mark Walag. Based from the data you have and
Mm.
the current status of hornbill diversity and abundance in Sulu, can we say that we are moving forward? And what are the indicators of a successful hornbill protection in Sulu?
So, yes, we are moving forward. We are still at the very vulnerable stage. We are just starting to gain the trust of the local communities and the local government. It is quite a fragile situation because of the clannish nature of how you work in this area. So one of the things that we need to consider in working is to be culturally sensitive and to be mindful about the intricacies of the relationships of the people on site. So while we are successful in implementing this project in Panglima Sugala, as indicated by the local government initiating the monitoring and the conservation of these species, primarily leading the conservation program with the support of the international group for the continued conservation program on the site. And at the same time, the counts of the hornbills are more promising than expected. So but we have not gone to the other sites. So the conservation of the Sulu hornbill is not just only limited to Panglima Sugala. It has to be done the same way in Languyan, Tandubas, in Bongao. Even Bongao has to take part of this, and the rest of particularly Holo Island, and that is where the challenge is. It's still very challenging. We are successful for now, but we are still on a vulnerable stage.
Yes, it's a work in
Work
progress, but the
progress.
progress is very
Yeah,
promising.
yeah.
Okay, I have another question here from my own department chair, Ma'am Ruth Gambawa. Hello, Ma'am, for joining us. Which fruits, etc., do hornbills feed on, and which trees do they use as nest or nest trees?
So here in Negros, we found at least a number of species that are primarily visited by hornbills. So the terrific hornbills really love the palms, yung mga uh, beetle, yung kapamilya ng beetle nut, yung palms na yan. They love that fruit, the native ones. They are primarily love the balete, ficus. So ficus is one of the most favorite na diet ng hornbill. But we also see them feeding on platia, on cinnamomum, on other species, even pandanus, the fruit of pandanus, there was one point that we found them. And some of these hornbills, during the time of breeding, would take in vertebrates, like reptiles, some small birds, bats, or even some mammals. In Sulu, we found that they visited quite a lot the ilang-ilang fruit. They love the ilang-ilang fruit. There's also again the balete. There were two other trees that we cannot identify. Apparently, the trees of the Tawi-Tawi region is more affiliated with the Bornean group of trees, and we can only identify them up to the family level, not even at the genus level. So we're still collecting the information to identify the species.
Okay, thanks for that, Lisa. I have still several questions here.
Mhm.
I hope you still have the energy because that's a very your project is a very interesting project. One is from Orlean.
Yes, Orlin.
Um, yes. So the question is, how does the insurgency in Polo affect the conservation of the Sulu hornbill? Before you answer that, I would like to just say that Lisa is one of the fearless leaders in conservation. She has been to Liguasan Marsh, Agusan Marsh, and now Hulo. So how does the insurgency in Hulo affect the conservation of the Sulu hornbill?
We started the conservation program, or the interest to do the conservation program in Holo and Tawi-Tawi as early as 1998. And it took us this long to finally get a gratuitous permit from the ARMM at the time, Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao, in 2011, 2012. So at the time when we were supposed to start the conservation program in 2012, starting with the research in partnership with the Philippine Marines, that was also the time that our third member of the group, Ivan Salinas, got kidnapped. So we were again on a setback for 5 years to wait until all these things have come down, and that establish again a new relationship, this time moving to Tawi-Tawi. Even when we work with Tawi-Tawi, it took us at least 2 years before we can actually set into the municipality and to work with that. We have to work with a lot of channels. So it's still not an easy area to go. But it's still a lovely area, one of the best sites to visit. Rainier has been there. You've seen Rainier, how he had managed to go around these sites looking for crocodiles. So it's not as bad as long as you follow the security protocol. It is very important that the security protocol, the local government permissions and all of this, just like applying for a travel with the COVID pandemic, it's like that. But this time with security protocol. And just do not go out on your own, always with a partner.
Yes, okay. So toe the line, follow protocols, and
Mm,
be mindful of
mm,
security issues. Okay, we have another question here from one of our faculty members of UP Mindanao, Sir Mac Achondo. But first of all, he wants to congratulate you on your
mm.
wonderful work in
Thank
conserving
you.
hornbills. The question is, Sulu hornbills are among the most, or it's the rarest hornbill species in the world.
Mm.
Can you give or recommend to us specific research gaps for researchers to work on?
There's so many research gaps. But you know what? If you say that this is the rarest hornbill in the world, this is, well, in terms of population count, it is smaller given the size of the island. But if you visit Panglima Sagala, go to the forest, you are always guaranteed to see the hornbill any time of the day. and that is how visible they are. It's even more difficult to look for the rufous-headed hornbill or Walden's hornbill here in Negros because there are very few people who have seen them. But then, yes, there's a lot. One of these things is we'd like also to see whether or not this species still occur in Holo. What are the different food plants that they are feeding on to identify this it's very important to identify the species so we can mainstream this in the regular reforestation activities of the local government and DNR, as well as with working with the CLOA owners, what species to maintain and to retain and not to cut. The other aspect is the genetics. We'd like to look into the genetic aspect, more studies on the breeding behavior, many more.
Okay. Again, two more questions, Lisa.
Yes.
One is, apart from involving ordinary citizens in your citizen science monitoring, are there any other opportunities for ordinary people to help in the conservation of hornbills? This is
Yes.
from John Paul Banzon
Uh,
of Davao Medical School Foundation.
okay. There's many ways where you can actually help. One is awareness of the hornbill activities. These are a very few people in the general masses, if you go and sample, are aware about our Philippine hornbills or not even recognizing what species they are. And there is a growing need for us to also participate, involved in the discussion when it comes to electing leaders. The support of our protected area, the future of our conservation, and the future of our threatened species like hornbills lies upon who we are voting next. So please vote responsibly. Look at into the people who will be sitting in the government who actually has an agenda for the conservation. The conservation of this species does not only conserve their habitats or the species itself, it will also help conserve our lives. So it's important to have that in mind. I think that's one of the greatest contribution that we can do.
Okay, thanks for that. And then for the last question, no, there are still other questions here, but in the interest of time, we need to focus only on one question. That is, what drove your institution to focus on the conservation of hornbills? And this is from Isaiah Sims.
Our organization, Philippines Biodiversity Conservation, is focused on looking into the threatened and endemic species and their habitats in partnership with the local stakeholders. So we choose species that are less charismatic, were given less conservation attention, and who are also species that are on the brink of extinction. And these are has always been the mantra or the guiding line of field bio ever since we started in 1991 as Philippines Biodiversity Conservation Program. So hornbills is actually just one of the programs that we are implementing. We are implementing as well other programs as well, but because hornbills are also bigger species that covers larger areas like protected areas, so they are very good indicators in working for places like protected areas.
Okay, so I think that's it for our open forum for Lisa. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Lisa,
so much.
for the
Thank you,
patience
sir.
and for the wisdom and for the inspiration. One of our fearless, no, female conservation leaders in the country. And
Thank you,
again,
thank
if you
you.
want to know more about Field Bio and also Mobile Foundation, no, please check their websites and also please support their cause. Again, a
Thank
round
you.
of virtual
Thank
applause
you.
to
Thank you.
Lisa. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank
Okay, so I think we need to move on to our third and last speakers. Um, so for our third and last speakers, I'm pleased to introduce a very admirable and a power couple for conservation. As they say, ladies first. Our third speaker finished her master's in environmental studies at the University of the Philippines in Los Baños and further completed the diploma course in conservation education at the Durrell Institute of Conservation and Ecology at Kent University, UK. The Catala Foundation, which she co-founded, uses endemic threatened species as flagships for conservation. She received the prestigious Whitley Award or the Green Oscars Award in 2017 for her work for the Philippine cockatoos and the Distinguished Alumna Award for Wildlife Conservation and Community Empowerment by UPLB CESAM in 2017. Please welcome the Chief Operations Officer of the Catala Foundation, Ms. Indira Widman. And for our last speaker, he has 30 years of working experience in biodiversity conservation with focus on tropical and subtropical Asia. Apart from extensive work on community-based conservation, he has also lectured on biodiversity conservation and tropical ecology at universities in Germany, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Now, he also holds a MSc in biology from the University, I don't know if I pronounced this right, Stuttgart, Hohenheim, Germany. And for his work in biodiversity conservation, he was bestowed the Order of Merit by the President of the Federal Republic of Germany. Together with his real-life better half, Indira, he received the Gold Medal for Conservation from the North of England Zoological Society in 2018. So please welcome the founder, currently Director for Species Conservation of the Catala Foundation, Peter Widman. Okay, again, I regret to inform that because of the general Wi-Fi failure in the whole of Palawan, Indira and Peter could not join us and do a live presentation, but they were very kind to send a recording of their PowerPoint presentation. But they're trying their best. No? Actually, they're here despite the erratic signal. So perhaps later, Peter and Indira can also entertain questions. So here is the recorded PowerPoint presentation of Peter and Indira to be shared by our IT officer, Clarence. I'll turn it over to you, Clarence.
Good afternoon, everyone. We were
Clarence, I think we lost the audio.
I would like to start my presentation with a quote. And this is from a very good friend of mine. He's a German, so he's not very optimistic. Germans are not very optimistic people. He says, you can never save a species from extinction, but you can buy it some time. There is some truth to it, and that's maybe partly the answer to the question, why does it take so long to save the Catala from extinction actually? We are doing that since more than 20 years, and we started, cockatoo was critically endangered, and it is still critically endangered. I hope our presentation shows and highlights what we have achieved and what we still have to do to at least buy the species some time. Cockatoos are wonderful birds which are distributed all over Australasia, which is mainly Australia and New Guinea, but also reach into Indonesia, and we have a single species out of the 21 cockatoo species has reached the Philippines. It's the northernmost distribution of any cockatoo species in the world. If we look at the historical distribution of the Philippine cockatoo, we can see it really deserved its name. It was distributed almost all over the Philippines with the exception of the northern two-thirds of Luzon, where it never was found before, but the rest of the Philippines, almost all big islands and very many of the smaller islands had populations of the Philippine cockatoo. So the white dots show you where the cockatoo was found before 1950, and the black dots show distribution between 1950 and 1999. So this is from a publication, The Threatened Birds of the Philippines, which was published by Kolar et al. In the year 1999. Since then, the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program by Katala Foundation has done some distribution surveys, and the picture changed very dramatically. So the diamonds, the yellow diamonds show where we found cockatoo still from 2000 to present. So this is also spanning over 20 years. And the red dots show where we looked for cockatoos, but we didn't find them anymore. What you can see is there is a concentration of the diamonds in the Palawan faunal region, and in the rest of the Philippines, there are almost all uh, red dots. There are some diamonds also, but all of these are probably what we call functionally extinct population, probably with the exception of the very southern one in Sulu. We do not know exactly, but the one in Bohol, in Dinagat, in Samar, and in Polillo, there are so few birds left. For example, in Bohol, probably 8 to 12 birds only. And these are mostly or exclusively birds which are poached for 20 years, 30 years. Their nests are poached. So what is left are the old birds which now stop breeding. So they are still alive, they're still flying around, but they are not reproducing anymore. So that's what we call functionally extinct. So de facto, that means the Philippine cockatoo now is an endemic to the Palawan faunal region. As I mentioned before, it is listed critically endangered because the population really collapsed, especially in the 1990s, 1980s, a bit earlier even. And right now we have a population, a global population left, which lies somewhere in between 820 and 1,280 individuals only. It's not declining anymore right now, as far as we know. It is stable, but it is concentrated on only very, very few locations. So we estimate we have viable populations only in 4 to 6 municipalities. And 4 to 5 of these municipalities are within Palawan, and maybe there is one viable population in the Sulu left. 4 project sites in Palawan, and in all of these 4 project sites, the cockatoo population is recovering. And out of these 4 project sites we are running by Katala Foundation, there is one site, our oldest Rasa Island, which holds 30 to 50% of the global population of the species on one single island, which is only 8 square kilometers in size. Everybody knows Palawan. Many people say it's the last ecological frontier. That's a term I do not like very much because it means different things to different people. Fact is, there are some good habitats still left. There is still a reasonably good forest cover left. Things are changing here as well, especially in the lowlands. We have mining companies there. We have large areas which are earmarked for monocrop plantations, especially oil palm and rubber. Also, there are new coconut plantations established in Palawan, which we also do not like that much, although there are many areas which have the coconut already since long time ago, but we don't like it very much because this is mainly on the very lowland areas, which is the core habitat also of the Philippines. If there's one thing you should remember from this presentation, or at least from my part of the presentation, is that Philippine cockatoo is an extreme lowland specialist. So I have some examples here of the forest formation where it can be found. The mangrove in the left upper corner, then the beech forest, upper right corner, riparian forest below, and the lowland dipterocarp forest on the lower right side. So extreme lowland forest, that means all our breeding records are in these lowland areas. I just want to talk very little about the feeding biology because normally that does not make a big problem for us. Cockatoos feed on a variety of trees mostly, or vines. We have recorded up to 107 species, and mostly they feed on seeds. Sometimes they feed on flowers or nectar, and sometimes even on bark. We have indications also that they might feed on insect larvae, which they pull out and chew out of the trees. Now they remove the bark and then they get after the insect larvae. But we have to still look at that. Normally not a problem when it comes to conservation, with one exception, which I will mention later on. Breeding biology is a problem for conservation because cockatoos, like most of the parrots, are cavity nesters. They need tree holes for nesting, and they need, because of their size, large trees and large tree holes to nest in. And that, in combination with the restriction to the lowland forest, is really a problem because, of course, lowland forests have disappeared, and all the big trees in lowland forests are, or most of them, are also in demand for timber poaching. So these are by themselves threatened species very often. What you see here in the picture is it's Compasia excelsa. This is the tallest tree which we can find in Palawan, which is, or in the Philippines even, which can grow up to almost 90 meters in height. So this is, of course, a very threatened species also in Palawan, because if you clear the lowland forest, very often you cut everything. Uh, as I mentioned already before, cockatoos are extreme lowland specialists, and this is reflected also in their breeding habitats. You see here on the graph, on the horizontal axis is the altitude in meters above sea level, and then the vertical axis is the number of nest trees we have recorded for the cockatoo. And you can see very easily uh, almost all nest trees are found between 0 and 50 meters above sea level. That's a bit outdated. We have more nest trees recorded now. That's maybe data from 10 years ago, but the picture itself did not change really. Almost all of the nest trees are in extreme lowland forest areas, which of course are the most threatened ones, not only in Palawan, but all over the Philippines. And that pancake-shaped thing you see below, this is Rasa Island, where we actually have most of our cockatoos worldwide. And you see how really flat it is. And the highest altitude of Rasa Island is about 4 meters above sea level, which is problematic for several reasons, of course. So here we have a summary of all the threats of the Philippine cockatoo. Some of them are getting bigger, some of them are getting smaller, some of them stay more or less the same. So the size of the latter really reflects how serious they are, and lowland forest loss is still the most serious threat among all. Also in Palawan, we are losing forest on a very large scale, which is already 10 years ago, it was about 8 hectares per day we lost on forest cover. It might be, we don't have recent data, but it might be even bigger nowadays. Poaching for the pet rate is still a very big problem, but it's probably increasing in importance because we have most of the existing cockatoo population are protected by the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program, and we did not record any poaching in 3 out of the 4 project sites in Palawan. The fourth project site is a relatively new one. It's a large forest area. There's still some poaching going on, but we hope that in the next number of years we can get a grip on that also. You can see a number of smaller threats here. For example, it's a very small blue one inbreeding and other small population effects. We just recently had a genetic study which found that even from different locations, the genetic makeup of the cockatoos is very, very similar. So there is a chance that they are inbred already. That might be a problem for the future, but we do not know exactly. But this is something we really have to monitor and to keep in mind. Our aside from the still ongoing lowland forest loss, which is really the biggest issue in Palawan right now, one worry is climate change. And maybe you remember the picture I showed you before of the very flat Rasa Island. With ongoing climate change, we will have sea level rise in the future, and so some of the very suitable and very important cockatoo habitats will be uh, reduced in size or will disappear completely in the next number of decades because of climate change. You also remember that I mentioned that food providing plants normally are not an issue, but there are exceptions also. For example, when we have El Nino years, there might be food shortages which affect the reproductive success of the cockatoos, and that means we have to rescue really nestlings. Maybe Indira will later talk about this one from the nests, and hand feed them because there is not enough food because it's so hot and it's so dry. Parents cannot find enough food for their offspring. And these events, these El Nino events, are getting more frequent also because of climate change. And if this should be the new normal for the climate in Palawan, what is an El Nino year, then this would indeed be also very bleak for the cockatoo. What you hopefully can see is that the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program has to address a lot of threats. It has to address them on a level which maybe from some people is surprising because it's a species conservation program. We have to have an ecosystemic and a participatory approach. Ecosystemic because we have to consider the whole ecosystem when we protect the species, which is of course very time consuming and very expensive, but it has the positive side effect that it benefits a whole number of other species. And it has also to be participatory because, as I mentioned, Philippine cockatoo is a lowland species. This is where the people are. The Philippine cockatoo is one of the very few critically endangered species which is really going into settlements also. You can see it within Puerto Princesa right now quite easily, which is both a challenge and both also a benefit. Benefit because we can actually show and demonstrate the species to people, but it's also a challenge because of direct persecution, because people are using slingshots, are using drones on the roost sites, or getting too close with the camera on the roost site and so on, because it's so close to people. So Indira will talk about that, and I hand over to her, and she will tell you more about the strategies or some of the strategies, multiple strategies of the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'd like to talk about the conservation strategies or the components of the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program. Fundamental to that is the conduct of research and studies. No? So our research includes population dynamics. So for example, nagsisingsing kami sa lahat ng mga inakay for that year. Tapos we have camera trapping, blood sampling to study whether they have viruses. Tapos nagka-characterize ng mga nest trees. Basically the ecology and biology of the species. Another very key strategy for us is really the implementation of the Wildlife Warden Scheme. Itong Wildlife Warden Scheme, this is where we are tapping the poachers, yung mga nagpupuslit ng mga ibon nung una, ng mga katala nung una, sila yung nire-recruit namin na magiging protectors or conservationists, mga wildlife wardens ang tinatawag namin. So, with this strategy, it's like hitting 4 cans with 1 slipper. Kung magduwa ka o batulata, usa ka sinilas, tapos upat ka lata dayon ang matumba, no, di ba? So, this is the concept here. Kasi mga kadalasan ng aming mga katrabaho ay puro members ng indigenous people. So number 1 is that you immediately remove the number 1 threat, and that is poaching. No? Sabi nga ni Peter. Number 2, we also provide them the alternative income so that they divert their activities from conducting illegal activities. Third is that because of their being a poacher, we also gain indigenous knowledge and skills from them in the conduct of the whole program. And lastly, that is also very important, is this: we instill the pride, no? Pride that they are now on the good side of the law, and then proud also that they have achieved something kahit sabihin nila na IP lang sila. So what is key here to the success, no? The indigenous knowledge, sabi ko, yung mga pag-aaral at kaalaman nila tungkol sa biology ng katala, talagang importante yun, yung timing o sequence ng breeding, alam nila ang kahoy, kung alin yung na-occupy na, alam nila which kahoy ang preferred na food providing or nest providing ng katala, tapos alam din nila how to take care yung mga orphaned or yung mga nag-starve na hatchlings kasi the idea is that dapat buhay yung katala na ibibenta nila. And very important skill that we really appreciate from our partner poachers ay yung pagka-climb. As you can see in this picture, talagang mataas, matatarog yung mga kahoy, yung mga nest trees ng mga katala, and their traditional climbing skills are very important. So, when we have recruited already these wildlife wardens and they are trained and capacitated, they are also doing the patrol and monitoring, which is also very important factor of strategy in our implementation. So, dumaan kami sa pen and paper, pero ngayon high-tech na rin kami gaya sa PEF, no? So, we have smart patrols, and with the use of smart patrols, you can generate information and reports immediately. And for example of that report is this infographics we are presenting now. And there is one important strategy is also protected area establishment and management. So I'd like you to take notice na sa aming mga maliliit na cockatoo reserves na establish namin, maliliit talaga masyado, which only covers 1.5% of Palawan's total land area, we should not be discouraged kasi more than a percentage of globally threatened taxa could also be found in our cockatoo sites. So as you can see, more than 50%, except for amphibians, which is now still ongoing, ay talagang makikita mo rin. So marami ang nakikinabang na samot-saring buhay sa paggawa lang, tas pag-implement lang namin ng Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program. You know, during long extensive dry season or drought na sinasabi nila, na ganito ang mga itsura ng mga natural habitats ng katala, talagang you do indirect intervention. So talagang magre-rescue ka, tapos ipapakainin mo, i-hand feed mo, and then they are put into a pre-release aviary para pwede pa silang i-release back to the wild once they are stable already. So that's another thing. And we're also doing translocation, meaning to say, after we have rescued from starvation or injury any bird from our project sites, we do translocation to bring them back to the wild. But the most important thing in this slide is to show you Gold. Gold is one rescued cockatoo in 2016, and in 2016 she was rescued, and then on the same 4 months after she was rescued, she was brought back to the island of Dumaran, and after 4 years, 2020, she bred na talaga. So ang success story dito na i-share namin at happy kami masyado ay hindi lang dahil si Gold naka-integrate sa wild population na nandun na sa Dumaran Island, parang supplementation ito siya. Pero, ang success story talaga ay yung si Gold naging matagumpay sa kanyang breeding attempts. At meron siyang successful na hatchling this year. Kaya, medyo happy talaga kami sa turnout ni Gold na aming na-translocated. So, sabi nga ni Peter kanina, yung habitat destruction, being a lowland forest specialist, is very important, is also a very big threat. So, dapat ay i-restore natin yung lowland forest na inyon. So, hindi lang po kami nagko-concentrate sa breeding area ng cockatoo, but also to the whole life cycle of the cockatoo. So, whether breeding or nesting, dapat sa foraging areas din niya. So, what we are doing here is prioritizing those trees na talagang nest and food providing trees for the katala. Of course, you know that we in all conservation projects, conservation education or tinatawag ng information campaigns are integral. And true enough, no? This is really very important and long-lasting. Hindi pwedeng one-shot lang. So our premise here is that we should instill pride. And with that pride, we can develop the emotion, the passion for conservation. Yan ang aming conservation education mantra. And all our conservation education are measurable. So, ibig sabihin, merong pre and post test na talaga makikita mo kung meron changes in the levels of knowledge, awareness, and even we attempt to change behaviors to achieve the conservation result we desire. One basic and important participation also is the citizen science, no? Ito ay siguro ang iba ring mga conservation groups gaya ng PEF at iba pa ay talagang nag-i-engage din talaga ng mga local participation. So dahil dito sa citizen science na na-train mo yung mga nasa community where you are working, ay na-prevent namin yung establishment or the proposed plan for a coal plant just 1 kilometer basically from our Rasa Island Wildlife Sanctuary na declared na talaga. So, dahil doon, ang community mismo ang nakibaka talaga na sa kanila nanggaling yung mga datos na totoong mayroong mga katalang naglabay-labay din sa area kung saan nila dapat itayo yung coal plant. So, na ating na-prevent yan. And I'd like to flex lang, no, itong si Nanay Veronica na talagang everyday, umaga hapon ay nandun para magsubaybay kung ilan yung mga katalang tumawid at bumalik sa Isla Rasa. At siya ay worried na worried kung hindi tugma ang bilang sa dumating na mga katala at bumalik na katala sa Isla Rasa. So yan po ang kanilang, kasi doon sa mga, yan po ay nakakatulong din sa ating pag-trace sa kanilang dispersal routes ng mga katala. Kasi ang mga volunteers natin o ang mga wardens natin o community volunteers ay equipped din sila ng mga binoculars at makikita nila minsan yung ating mga singsing na kung saan makita natin, uy, nag-join na yung mga hatchlings ngayon sa mga adults. Okay. Another important strategy is also to develop that culture of cockatoo conservation. So, nasabi ko na kanina, yung Wildlife Warden Scheme namin, hindi na po Philippine Katala Foundation talaga ang nagbabayad. Kasi these are all, especially for two LGUs, sila na po ang nagbabayad ng mga incentives whole year round. Not only for the breeding season, but whole year round, sila na po ang nagbabayad ng incentives ng ating mga wildlife wardens. Of course, in Nara, where Rasa Island Wildlife Sanctuary is located, talagang tinatawag ng Philippine Cockatoo Capital of the World, where almost 50% or up to 50% of the world population could be found. We have a Katala Festival that is done every year kasi naka-institutionalize na yan, may ordinance na yan. Tapos there are several ordinances meant for the cockatoo conservation. So lahat niyan, at very recently, they made the Philippine cockatoo as their municipal flagship species sa Nara, for example. So yan po ang kultura na gusto nating magawa sa community. When you do the Philippine Cockatoo Conservation Program, because of its approach being ecosystemic and participatory, ay lahat kuridas, no? Lahat ng mga samut-saring buhay na nakikashare, nakikibahagi sa tahanan ng Katala, gaya ng Palawan Hornbill, Brunei Parrot, Blue-Headed Rackettail, Pangolin, Porcupine, Bakuko, and the deer species, they are also protected kasi they share the same habitat. So kung protektahan mo yung habitat, talagang magbe-benefit din sila. Talaga. So, dahil sa success stories na ito, it's not about getting the awards, no? It's not about getting the awards and meeting Her Royal Highness Princess Anne, but it's really about what is the performance. The ultimate indicator is what is the performance of your species, yung Katala mismo. So nakikita natin dito na talagang ang population ay talagang tumataas. I speak only here for Rasa, but in all other of our project sites, the same trend. In fact, sa Puerto Princesa ngayon, makikita mo na ang mga Katala talaga sa syudad mismo. success story na masayang-masaya kami na i-share sa lahat dahil talagang mangyayari lang ito kung merong kang persistence and determination and passion. So, ang ating mga lessons na gustong ibahagi sa lahat ay dapat science-based decision making. So, importante yung research talaga. Mag-umpisa sa research para doon ka makagawa ng mga management proposals or actions based on the species itself. And then, encourage and empower communities to cultivate so that you can cultivate that passion and commitment that they are part of the conservation program. And because you have the community already and the local government and the local agencies and all the national agencies with you, it also needs funding, di ba? So dapat long-term din ang commitment ng ating mga sponsors. And lastly, conservation programs, NGO work, you cannot have, there is no exit strategy for now, di ba? Kasi the challenges are always mounting every year, one year after the other. So dapat we are ready for the long haul. So hindi tayo pwede just built for 2 or 3 years. Dapat really. So we have been working for over 20 years to be able to reach these successes that we can share to you. And part of that is because we have also long-term commitments from these organizations that we owe and we are indebted. So, I think that is all. Matamang salamat sa inyong tanan and we will entertain questions then.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter and Indira. Again, although the presentation is recorded, we have with us Peter and Indira in this webinar. So we'll try to see if they can answer the questions. If not, then maybe I will just read the answers that they've written in their in the messenger box. Okay, for the first question for Peter, and this question is from one of our colleagues also here in Kalinan, from Anton Pingoy. Is there any possibility of reintroduction of these species to islands where they have become locally extinct or extirpated? Or is the Palawan, is the Kakatu ready island specific? Again, is there any possibility of reintroduction in other areas that they were lost? No, Peter.
Actually, good afternoon, everyone. Actually, we are just trying that right now. We are preparing a site in Siargao where it's completely extinct, and this would be with birds from Palawan. Normally, we should use populations which are close to the reintroduction sites, but since it's completely gone, and since there are no viable populations anywhere near Siargao, we have to use birds from Palawan. We are lacking genetic studies from all over the countries, but within Palawan, we can say that they are very, very closely related. Maybe they're even inbred already. So we don't have any problems to mix birds within Palawan, and whenever they are completely extinct somewhere, we are not hesitant also to bring birds from Palawan there, since there is very little likelihood that we can mix with wild populations anywhere outside of Palawan.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Another follow-up question. Apart from, of course, genetic criteria, this is from Gudo Akusalem, again, one of our friends. What are the site criteria for reintroduction? And again, you've mentioned Siargao. Apart from Siargao, which island is more viable?
Yeah. Actually, we have a catalog of criteria. They comprise biological criteria, for example, how is the habitat? Are there food providing plants? Are there competitors? Are there nest holes and so on? Actually, we also want to avoid to introduce the cockatoo into areas where we have highly threatened cavity nesters, so there is no competition with other highly threatened species. Also, stuff like that. Then, of course, there is how is the poaching threat? How are the socio-economic conditions in the area, and how are the local governments? Are they supportive or not? How the local communities are buying in, and so on. And Finally, there are the logistical parameters. How can we access the area? How is the possibility for monitoring once we release them, and so on and so on. So there's a whole catalog of criteria. And what we found, we also assessed areas where we have remnant cockatoo populations, like in Polillo or in Bohol. And surprisingly, they scored relatively low. We were surprised by that. So actually, the cockatoos there are not living in the best of conditions, no? And this refers mostly to habitat degradation. So there are very few nest trees available and so on, compared to where it completely extinct, for example, in Chirgau. Probably this was due to poaching, but the habitat stayed more or less intact. So for us, it's easier when we do reintroduction to address like poaching issues and so on, but it's very difficult or long lasting if you have to restore the habitat.
Mm. If
Okay.
if I if I
Yes,
may add,
Indira.
we had already conducted of over 28 sites all over the Philippines within the historical range of the species, and assessed how they score in the parameters set by different experts in the Philippines and abroad also. So there was a national workshop done to evaluate all the surveys that we have done and assessments.
Right. So we're very happy to hear that, Peter and Indira. So basically the criteria, again, multi-criteria based on natural science data as well as social science data, and which is a nice way of integrating all of this information for decision making. So we have another question here from Shane Nadine Paelden. Well, you mentioned earlier about having long-term champions, no, long-term supporters, and he said, "How are you?" She said, "How are you able to convince and encourage sponsors and the government to support the conservation of the cockatoos?"
I think very very fundamental to that is you are able to share and to show results. No, tangible results are very important. So it's not only deliverables like how many seminars have you conducted, how many people have you reached, like that. So let's go beyond that, and really how many people are working for it, and what are the changes in their attitudes. No, so the local community, how supportive are they, how are they fighting against a certain development program, for example, a certain development project that is proposed in the area that will eventually affect the flight patterns of the cockatoo, something like that. So if you and as I mentioned in my presentation, that the most important indicator is really the population of your species, whether this was increasing or not. So if we talk about our pilot site in Rasa Island Wildlife Sanctuary, we started in 1998 with 23 to 25 individuals. Now we are close to 400 individuals. And when we started in that area, the Tagbanwa would tell me, Kako would tell me, ay nako ma'am, para talaga yung mga white tenants na nakahanger lang dyan sa mangrove and sa coastal forest. And I said, mga ilan kaya Tatay Kako? Sabi niya, mga 400 ma'am. Way back then, I would tell him, ay that's too it's too much for a very small island, Taikako. And true enough, he was not lying at all. And after more than 20 years, we see the same linens, white linens. And even if we've been working for this species for the past 20 years, you still, the moment you are in the field and you see the cockatoos, or even in the city, you see the cockatoos, it's the same enthusiasm and the same passion you have felt when you started it.
Yes, I can really feel the passion, Indira, and I think this drives your achievement of your positive outcomes. You know, increase in population numbers is really a success indicator, and also, of course, the way you combine indigenous knowledge as well as scientific knowledge in your work. Again, one of the admirable actions or initiatives of the Katala Foundation is your work with the wardens, no, of uh, Palawan, no. So the question is, what made you decide to work with these wardens or your PDLs, no, You use that as an acronym. And what are the memorable experiences you had with your PDLs? Or you can also articulate what
Sige.
PDL means.
For the information, thank you, Jason. For the information of everybody, PDLs is persons deprived of liberty. So this is the politically correct uh, word for our friends in the prison farm. No, so we work in the prison penal farm, and um, the most memorable for me, I think, is when you do the education activity with them, and you know how short I am, diba? How let's say how cute I am. You know how short I am and cute I am, and when I'm in the middle of 400 PLs, the security guard would start shouting at me, "Ma'am, are you okay? Where are you?" And then you raise your hand in the middle of 400 PDLs. I'm okay. I'm fine. And really, I tell you, there was never, I don't know, maybe there is only one instance that I felt so threatened and alerted that I'm amongst the PDLs, only when Peter is going to the field with one or two of them, and one of that two would not tell what crime he has committed. So that would scare me. That would scare me when the superintendent would tell, okay, here are your guides, Peter. And then during the interview, you will say, don't bother to ask what my crime, ma'am, basta you will be safe. So maybe that's the only thing. But when working with them, we have already people who are PLs who are monitoring the cockatoos within the penal farm, and there are few of them who are managing our tree nursery also within the penal farm.
I also
Okay,
want
so
to
you,
add something to that.
yes, Peter?
Actually, I mentioned during the presentation that there are only cockatoos in very, very few sites viable population. So we don't have the luxury to choose where we want to work. No, we have really to go where the
The
cockatoo
cockatoos.
is. And if this is a panel farm, we have to go to the panel farm. There's no choice really.
Yes, it's basically where the cockatoos are that would
Yeah.
determine where you would go, regardless of whether safety. But then again, where the
Yeah,
species
yeah,
is, that's where you
yeah.
go. Okay. I think we still have one more question here. What's the way forward for the Philippine cockatoos? No, you've demonstrated increase in numbers in some of your sites. So, what do you think are the exciting prospects for Philippine cockatoo conservation in the country?
I mean, what our long-term goal is to downlist the species from the red list from critically endangered to endangered, vulnerable, and so on. The good thing is if we would assess it nowadays, it would not qualify for critically endangered anymore. It would be a lower category, but because there's a safeguard in the red list, it's still now in the high category. We have to, of course, secure what we have achieved so far. We still have to work on protected areas. And what we have to do for the longer term is also to do really massive habitat restoration, especially in the lowlands. The current land use practices in Palawan are very challenging. We are also losing lowland forest, as I mentioned earlier. We have to work on that because once we are losing in the very long run these strongholds of the cockatoos on the coral islands because land area is shrinking, they have to go somewhere. And right now, there are really very few options where they could go. So we have to do habitat restoration.
Okay, especially for forest dependent species like the Philippine cockatoo and many more species in the country. Okay, so well, before we let you go, we're very happy that you can still join us. It appears that the Wi-Fi connection is stable. The recording went very well. We're very happy with that.
Thank
Would you
you.
like to give one last message, each of you, to our viewers?
No, you start. No, I think what you have seen from all the presentations that you really have to be in there for the long term. There are no easy exit strategies. Even in the best case scenario, if you completely downlist your species from the red list, which happens very, very rarely, you still have to have a look at it. No, you still have to monitor what's going on because you never know what's popping up, what kind of threat is popping up next. We thought if we have protected area, if we control the poaching, we are out of the bushes, but there are other things coming up. Climate change is one thing. We have novel diseases where we have to have a look at, and so on and so on. There are new invasive species, so it's no exit strategy basically. So as my good friend Roland Wirth said, you can only buy some time for the species, but you can never really save it.
Yeah. In addition, I think I repeat again, I repeat the mantra that we should share a place to live. No, but I think for all the students of Jason and for all those who are viewing right now, all the speakers are really telling you the connectedness of everything, no? So lahat tayo ay magkakaugnay. So help spread that story and that make yourself available to spread the good information and the right information that we are really needed for conservation of the biodiversity in the Philippines, because we are very unique, and since we are the destroyers, we should be the responsible also caretakers, and that we are able to restore, because at the end of the day, it's not only the biodiversity that benefit, but also we humans as well.
Okay, thank you very much again, Peter and Indira, for joining us. We're very happy to see you. Thanks for the inspiring words, and I hope your stories would inspire, our young practitioners, our future early career conservationists. Again, thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Neil.
Bye.
Yes, sir. So, yes, it has been an inspiring and I muted. No, okay. So it has been an inspiring and enriching afternoon indeed. So we had listened and learned a lot from four of the country's conservation champions. So from their individual conservation works, outreach, and inspiring success stories, as well as the challenges in doing conservation through a focal species approach, we have learned this afternoon a lot of information and strategies on how to make conservation work. And on a greater extent, the several talks this afternoon provides us the main lesson that conservation needs a concerted effort and action, and that's very crucial. So I am looking forward that everyone in this webinar could bring those important lessons from our four speakers to your individual conservation work. So to officially close this webinar, allow me to call Dr. Ibanez, Jason Ibanez, for his message. Sir
Okay,
Jason.
thanks, Neil. Before we close, of course, I sincerely thank our speakers, Tess, Lisa, Indira, and Peter, for doing this. No, for doing this pro bono. No, this is definitely a labor of love from you. I also thank my Bio 177 conservation biology students, no, for inspiring this forum. To my dear department at UP Mindanao, BSES, no, thank you for supporting this initiative. And of course to you, Neil, my co-instructor for Bio 177, our IT officer, volunteer, Clarence Bore, the man behind the curtain. To Aliyah Enrique, no, the title of the forum is from a class essay she wrote. And to everyone, no, friends, new friends, and to conservation practitioners from different parts of the Philippines, thank you for taking time to share and join us for this forum. Again, our fault, our fix. Let us do our share, however small it is. Thanks again, and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.